Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging we are in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of Métis Nation. My name is Neil Hart and I'm chairing today's panel. With me to my immediate left is Harvey Diamond and to my far left is Richard Whitebread. The assessor today is Matthew Barakas and the recording secretary is Kara Balshaw. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application and will limit discussion to those matters. The statements of the applicants or assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions based on the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Okay, so can you swear in?
Yes. You affirm, right?
Sure.
Please state your name.
Matthew Brogus.
Do you affirm that the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first item today is 1050 Powell Street. So can you read the roll number and your evidence?
Okay, 1050 Power Street, 110306300000. It's an apartment, 1972, 54 suites, 55 outdoor parking spots. 2020 assessment for the April 1st 18 reference days, $5,534,000. On page 2 of my evidence, property was purchased in June of 2014 for $5,225,000. Renovations were then done to the property. There's no permits for the renovations. Most recent mailer shows a high level of vacancy, a relative high level of expenses. So, given the fact that it was renovated, pictures will show. Near the end of my brief, that the property was renovated. We're not too far off the 2014 sale price, so no changes are made.
Okay, any questions from the panel on this? Harvey?
No, I don't know.
Sure.
Have you seen the property?
No, I haven't inspected any of them.
Okay, thank you, no questions.
And I have no questions, so thank you very much for that. Next item is 505 Talbot.
505 Talbot, 14091755200. Apartment, built 69, 17 suites. April 1st reference date of 18, 1,439,000 on the assessments. Turn to page 2. Property sold in August of 2016 for $1,275,000. That was an associated sale vendor and purchaser are the same, so that's not an arm's length sale. That's not it. Okay, so looking at the evidence here, we used modeled everything. So with the gross potential, right?
My apologies.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So will you swear in or affirm this morning? All right. Please state your name. Susan Sabanek. Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Okay, can you just summarize your evidence again
On powers?
Yeah,
Okay.
just so if Ms. Panic has any questions of you.
Oh, yeah, I'll let her get set here for a second. You good? Okay, rule number 1103063000001050 powers. Rule year 2020, April 1st, 2018, reference date, assessed value 5,534,000. 54 suites, built in 1972. It's an apartment, 2 stories, 55 outdoor parking spots. Construction class is C, masonry bearing walls. So the property, if you go to page 2, for a request for income and information, you'll see that other than 2017, we haven't received any mailers from them. So it was difficult to go back into history and find out what sort of historical expenses and income were outlaid on this property. Subject sale history, June 20th, on page 2 you see the bottom highlighted, June 20th, 2014, the property sold for $5,225,000. According to notes, the property was renovated after the purchase. Don't have any permits taken out on this renovation, so I'm unable to ascertain how much was spent on the property. Skip ahead to page 11, you'll see the pictures. Does look like a significant amount of work is done. This is a 1972 building. This is definitely not a 1972 kitchen. This kitchen is to be redone. Bathroom. Oh, we got some backsplash there. Looks like flooring's been done as well. So they did a bunch of work to the place. So we have it assessed at $5,534,000. They bought it for $5,225,000, a little over 4 years prior to reference date. So when I was looking at their income and expenses, they only submitted one mailer recently, past 10 years, and that's for 2017. And it does look like there's a high level of expenses, given the amount of suites on the property. That's found on page 7. It's their income and expense mailer. If you go to page 9, you'll see that there's a high level of vacancy on this property. I would suspect that They are renovating, well, you know, maybe I'll save that for a question, whether renovations are ongoing or not. I do have a complaint from 2014 saying that they were renovating when people were still in there. So I'm wondering if that isn't still happening as people go in and out. And is in effect influencing the vacancy level. So I didn't really put weight on the income and expense mailer too much, given the level of vacancy, and the, you know, high level of R&M per unit. We're looking at $2,000 at a place that looks like it's completely renovated. So they're either not done or they're doing something else. So model is used, given the property sold for $5,225, 2014, and then it was renovated. We're only at $5,534. I think the assessment's pretty reasonable. Rent comps on page 2 fall within the range of properties in the area, and model cap and expenses for use. That's my evidence thinking.
Okay, questions of the assessor?
So you chose to use rather than the property's rent, a average monthly rent in your calculation,
Yeah, it's model.
but like model driven. So despite the fact that you had the actuals, you didn't use those?
No, not without knowing what the actual expenses are. Well, I know what the actual expenses are, I just don't think that's typically what a property not being renovated would operate at.
But I'm not talking about the expenses, I'm talking about the rents
Yeah,
themselves.
I chose model rent.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Okay, Harvey, any questions of the?
Just a question, I guess the cap rate was modeled,
Yeah, it's modeled.
so every building similar to this one would have a similar cap rate?
So in this market region, given the area and the size and the age, it gets the 5.3 cap rate. So if the size changes, and it's the same year, the same area, the cap rate will change as well.
As a size, so as it gets larger or smaller?
Yeah, we have groupings in terms of sizes. So different sized properties in the area of the same vintage get different cap rates based on which bucket they fall into.
Okay, that's my question.
Okay, Richard, any questions?
I had asked if you had attended the property.
No, unfortunately, I haven't attended inspector.
Can you tell us where the photos came from?
The photos came from would have been an advertisement, 2016, what I have in my notes here.
So you don't know if every suite looks like this?
No.
Not having attended?
No, definitely, that's something I want to find out.
Okay, thank you. No other questions?
Okay, and I have one question, so you can give your presentation.
So the subject property consists of a 54-unit, 24 one-bedroom, 32-bedroom, 2.5-story walk-up, built in approximately 72. As already indicated, the property was sold or purchased by the current owner in 2014, and the building was renovated through 2014 and 2016. I can confirm that all the suites essentially look like what the pictures. They're beautiful suites, actually. It's actually probably one of the more impressive looking properties in the portfolio. But one of the challenges with this building while the renovations were going on is that the building contained a great deal of asbestos. And so yes, the building was virtually emptied out during the course of those renovations. So it didn't go back onto the market, the rental market, until 2017.
when the renovations were completed. Despite that, the being renovated as nicely as it is, the property continues to experience above average vacancy. So my methodology in evaluating this property was to take the actual rents, which are under RTB control, so and apply a 5% vacancy. Now, the vacancy was over 25% in both 2017 and 2018. And I just looked at currently, and it's still sitting at 10%, which is, again, after 3 years of being on the market, it's still, as I said, it's experiencing a great deal of vacancy. Because it was under renovations, its actual operating expenses are not in line with what would be typical. So I actually did apply the city's model medium rate to the actual rental income from the property. And so if you go to the bottom of page 2, the potential income from the units is $542,291 at the calendar year 2017. The 5% vacancy gives a gross income of $569,406. Applying that median operating expense equals a net income of $286,60, and I've indicated a 5.5 cap rate on this to get a value of and $5,250,000 rounded. And the reason for the 5% cap rate is based on the cap rates as set out in Cushman and Wakefield's summaries and Colliers International's for the Q1, quarter 1, 2018 cap rates. Those ranged from 5 to 5.7 and 5 to 6. This property is pretty close to Main Street. I think that's what's part of what's influencing its vacancy, because like I said, the suites look very nice. And so those are my submissions.
Okay, do you have questions of the opponent?
Yes. How much money was spent on the renovations?
I don't have that figure.
So all 55,
Units got new flooring.
54.
All 54 got new
Sorry.
flooring, painting, and kitchen cabinets.
So flooring, paint, bathrooms were done too as well?
Yeah, well, I know that the cabinetry in the bathrooms were done. I'm assuming the tub was replaced as well.
Did they do the windows?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did they do anything like the roof or insulation?
I don't, again, not that I'm aware of. I'm trying to think if there was, I know there was a plumbing issue that got repaired with plumbing lines that are in the crawl space at the same time this renovation.
Any electrical stuff?
Not aware.
So you couldn't give like a ballpark, like per suite, how much was spent?
No, I don't have that information.
All right. Was an exemption applied for? Because it was a pretty big rental
Oh,
We didn't apply for rehabilitation.
So it's 25% vacancy, 2017, that's kind of the shadow post-reno. It says here in your brief, 5%, 2018, is that what it was?
No, 25% was 2015 and 18. Currently, it's 10%.
It's
I
10.
used 5.
Oh, okay, so use 10,
No, I used 5.
use 5.
The actual is 10%.
Okay, so on 25.
25
down to 10,
down to 10, and I used 5.
And you used 5. So it is going down though. Do you know what the vacancy was before the renos?
I do not. We're going back to
Oh, 2000.
14.
Right.
Like, it was-
Not that high.
You know, it
So you think an investor would buy this on a long-term basis, basically assuming an above-market vacancy?
yes, based on its performance.
Okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, Richard, any questions?
Where was the asbestos?
Okay, so the flooring contained asbestos.
Contained or?
Contained, so the flooring had to be removed and new flooring was put in.
Yeah.
So, that was, and then the building still contains asbestos. There's asbestos in the drywall compound. So anytime you have to cut into the wall, appropriate measures have to be taken, as well as it's got a textured coat on ceilings that still contain asbestos.
And is the owner required to notify tenants that this is the case, or potential tenants that this is the case?
We do notify the tenants of the asbestos in the drywall joint compound so that they're not putting holes in the drywall and
So
disturbing it.
prospective customers, tenants, would know the building has asbestos in it.
They would know that when they were leasing, like we don't advertise it in our
No,
material,
but-
but when they come through and we review our leases with them, is when they're
So they could potentially be affecting your vacancy rate.
correct.
Yeah. All of the renos are finished now? That's
Correct,
that's true.
they were finished in late 2016. Might have been like a little bit of straggling after the,
Okay. That's all my questions.
Okay, Richard?
Okay, due to the renovations, was an application made for exemption from rent controls?
no.
And why can we do that?
Okay, we actually did make an application and then it was withdrawn. The property proved to be more challenging than we expected when we were renovating, and we did not go ahead with all of the plans that were initially done because we ran into a lot more costs. We didn't expect to be quite in the position that we were in.
Okay, and I suppose in fairness too, if you got the rental rates up, you probably would have a higher vacancy factor.
Probably.
So you might not be farther ahead. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I don't really have a question, just noting an error in your calculation.
Oh, no,
You seem to have added the vacancy,
instead of
subtracting
substitute
it.
it.
uh,
Yes, I
So-
did
That would reduce your
figure.
figure. I don't know if you wish to modify that or.
So then the net, the
Must be around 515.
15,176, yeah. it for 4,263,900, so 4,260,000.
4,260,000? All right. Do you have any questions arising from that?
So it's 4,260,000?
Yes.
4,276,000.
276?
That's my calculation, not 260.
Sorry, I didn't do it. It's 4 million,
I'm gonna because I got 4,260,000 rounded, so I'm gonna apply. Yeah, that's using my 5.5 cap rate, I get 4,263,927.
okay.
All right.
Just a main question, you guys bought it, you renovated it. Is it worth $1 million less with renovations now?
Based on its income,
Okay.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on then to Talbot Avenue, 505 Talbot. Okay, so you can proceed.
Okay. 505 Talbot, 140917-55200. April 1st reference date, 18. Assessed value, 1,439,000. 17 suites. 12 outdoor parking spots. Construction class C masonry, bearing walls. So looking at this property, page 2, been somewhat compliant in returning mailers. Subject sale is associated, so that's not an arm's length sale. For $1,275,555. So average monthly rent, model parameters were used, $728,038 for an effective gross income with a model vacancy at $144,727. Expense ratio 49.29%. Net operating income with a capitalization rate that's modeled generates a estimated market value of $1,439,000. Page 4 shows the rental comps. So, see here that we got 4 rental comps, average monthly rent $728. Got some comps in the area that are similar in vintage, though they are older. 3 of the 4 are construction class C buildings. 2 of the 4 have bachelor suites, which would bring their rents down. And our rent is below what the other 4 comparables are. Look at page 4, that's our capitalization chart. Based on age, area, size, 5.1 cap was used. Go to page 7. That shows the most recent income and expense. Mainly we were missing 16 and 15. So looking at this property, look at the maintenance and repair, look at the number of suites it has, you look at the maintenance supplies and whatnot. R&M plus supplies are $2,104 per unit. Seems a lot higher than what we're used to seeing. We usually see $1,500 on the high end. We're looking at page 10. Looks as though we've got a 15% vacancy on the property as well. So it's got higher vacancy than what we typically see, in around 2-3%. Some high bad debt as well. Utilities, when you look at the utilities expenses, we typically see for non-townhouse style apartments, we see utilities in and around the 15% of effective gross income range. And what we're seeing here is we're seeing 24%. That's probably an effect of being influenced by the vacancy level that we're seeing. We're seeing an above market vacancy, so the question is why? Well, we don't have permits for this one either, but if you go to page 11, you'll see that the property has been renovated. Looks highly similar to the other property. They probably use similar, probably use the same people, same supplies to do it. So, given that we don't know when these renovations took place, and we've got, you know, 2104 per unit on expenses on the R&M plus supply side, I can't confirm whether or not that includes any renovations in suite. So I didn't use the income and expense mailer as a basis on determining whether or not our market-derived assessment was accurate or not. So, last time around, it was confirmed at the Board of Revision at $1,245,000. This time, we're $1,439,000. We're not that much higher than last go around, given the renovations. And questions about the current condition, not being able to inspect it, I wasn't able to make any changes. Thank you.
Okay, questions?
When you say you weren't able to inspect it, did you ask to inspect it?
No.
And again, you've used model-driven rents here rather than actuals?
Yes.
Those are my questions.
Okay, Harvey, any questions?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
No, none.
Okay, you can give your presentation then.
Okay. So this property is a 17-unit building, built in '69, and it, due to its age, requires a great deal of regular maintenance. There are only 2 suites in the building that have been renovated. Those were renovated before the sale that took place in 2016. Having said that, one of those units that was renovated has subsequently been re-renovated because the tenants that were in there actually tore cabinetry off walls and destroyed the unit. So yes, the income and expenses were out of the norm for this property as a result of those, as a result of that occurrence, mainly. The rest of the units have not been renovated, so there's only 2 2-bedrooms. And there was an application made by the previous owner to exempt those units when they were renovated, but they are now back under rent control because those happened. And the exemption has since expired. The repair after the unit was trashed did not form the basis for another exemption application. So for this property, because its operating expenses were for 2017 were out of the normal range. What I did is I took the expenses. Unfortunately, I don't have the expenses for the calendar year 2016, the sale happened, so we only had a part year in our office. We didn't get from the vendor the other part of the year. Notwithstanding this was non-arm's length, the building wasn't managed by us before the sale. So what I did have as part of the sale was the operating expenses from 2012 to 2015, and then the actuals for 2017. So what I did was looked at 2012 to 2015 and then applied a CPI and increase to them, and that gave me expenses of $81,000 for the year. And then what I also did at the bottom of page 2 is I took some actuals and took some stabilized, or I took actuals and then tried to stabilize them. So you'll see that chart that is at the bottom of page 2 and goes further. We've got insurance, which I use the actuals, property management, I use the 5% of gross income. Kind of did some stabilization amounts. I used a repair and maintenance budget of $1,000 per unit and came to $81,625. So on that basis, I got the CPI to the actuals for the average of those prior years was a reasonable number to use. So under my evaluation, I've got the actual potential income. Again, this building is experiencing higher than normal vacancy, but I just applied the model vacancy. Additional income of some parking fees, and that gives us gross income of $129,661. Operating expenses of $81,000, a net operating income of $48,595, and I applied a 5.4 cap rate. Again, this building is aged, it's going to be difficult to rent, and I thought that was a more appropriate cap rate. And so the founded value for that would be $900,000.
Any questions?
So the reported vacancy, average percentage, I got is almost 8% for 2017.
Correct.
I just glanced ahead, and we're looking at the current condition of the property, not looking at the numbers for subsequent years. I'm looking at a 16% vacancy in 2018. So what I'm wondering, are they renovating any other suites?
No.
No?
Not other than things that have been trashed, no.
Okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Kenny, Richard, questions?
Yeah, just looking at page 3, where you have 1 bedroom 14 and 2 bedroom 54, is that a typo?
Typo, yes. It's 3, I believe it's 3 2-bedrooms, and the balance are, 4 2-bedrooms and 13. I think the math is correct on the annual income bill. Let me just double check that. Yeah, 14, it should be, there's another typo. 591.73 for the 1-bedrooms and 841.41 is the correct for the 2-bedrooms for the
So the
average.
591.73, take off the
But the one-
0.24
yeah.
as well.
Clearly, I should not be working on briefs right before a long weekend.
Thank you.
Harvey?
No questions.
Just on your paragraph on vacancy, it seems that the the last two sentences, and
Again, yes, I took this from another brief and I didn't make the change.
okay,
Sorry.
all right, that's what I thought. The dangers of cut and paste.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I step out to the washroom quickly?
Sure, we'll have a brief break. 5-minute break then. Okay, we will come back to order. Next item on the agenda is 405 Kingsford. So you can.
Yep. Okay, 405 Kingsway, roll number 04000048, 6,000, apartment.
You mean Kingsford?
Kingsford, pardon me. Actual year built, 1969. It's got an effective year built on it to reflect renovations done to the property, which can be found starting at the end of my brief, page 16. Pretty familiar renovations, needless to say. 15 suites, 14 outdoor parking spots, construction class C masonry ground walls. I made a recommendation to reduce the assessment. The assessment for April 1st, 2018 was $2,109,000. That was model generated. So what I did is I looked at the stabilized actuals. So you can find that on page 5. So there seemed to be a pretty big gap between what the model was cranking out and what the most recent years were cranking out, rather 2-year income statement, not 3 years, because that's what I had most recently. So in order to come up with a number, I looked at the actuals. I looked if the actuals were behaving normally. We've got a 54% expense ratio. We've got in and around 1,000 on the repair and maintenance, which seems reasonable. And we have vacancy and bad debt under 5%. So what I did is I took the 2-year actuals and I applied our modeled cap 4.7 to bring it down to 1,558,000.
Okay, how do you feel about that, Rick?
You know what, there was another error in my submission when I did the correction. I got 1,536,000, so we're virtually the same. So
you're accepting
I'm
it?
accepting that.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from panel?
No?
No. Okay. Thank you. Next we come to 310, our ultimate property is 310 Addison.
Okay, 310 Ansem, 050042, 00000, assessed at $13,027,000 for the April 1st, 2018 reference date. So, built in 87, no effective year built on it, 108 outdoor parking spots, 108 suites, construction class D. This one as well, I made a recommendation on, based on the stabilized financials of the property. That's when I looked at 2000, I looked at the two recent mailers that we had. That's as far as we can go back. There seemed to be first thing that pops out is like our gross potential rent by the model is 1,255,000 with the modeled 3% cap rate. There's very little vacancy here, but I applied the 3% to it. There seemed to be a pretty big gap in terms of rent, so that leads me to believe that an adjustment may need to be warranted if the expenses are behaving normally with a 47% expense ratio and a repair and maintenance under 1,200. The 5% management typically seen on the market, we get expenses that are, once stabilized, look pretty normal. With the 5% cap rate based on age and area, a recommendation was made to reduce the assessment to $11,237,000.
Okay, and how do you feel about that recommendation?
With that one, I think I'm going to say that it's still a little too high.
Okay. All right, so is there anything more you want to add on your presentation?
Well, I mean, I gave it a 3% vacancy. If you turn to page 5, the actual vacancy reported was $4,000 for 2016, and it's saying no vacancy, which really isn't something that an investor would assume. So applying a 3% vacancy gave it $32,000 on the vacancy bad debt, which is significantly more than it's actually experiencing, but I felt I was quite generous in that regard. But it looks as though there is good demand for the property, basically, is a roundabout way of getting. So I'm not sure where it would be too high.
Okay, do you have any questions of the assessor on this presentation?
You'd agree that this property hasn't been renovated, it is sort of, it's,
We don't have any effective year applied to it, and I don't have any pictures, so without being able to get out there and inspect it, if we're looking at the rents of this property compared to the rents of the properties we were talking about previous, they seem to be pretty close. Those properties were older, but they had brand new stuff, so I actually don't know if it's been renovated or not.
Fair enough. But its rents are lower than other comparables that you've pointed out to in your,
Yeah, we have on page 4, effective year built 1987. We've got range of 73 to 81. They all have 1 and 2 bedrooms, a good mix. And we are within the range, but we are looking like we are on the lower end.
the lower, okay. And the cap rate that you chose for this property, that's model driven?
That's model driven.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Okay, Harvey, any questions?
Okay, well, you came to a lower NOI than I see the applicant's got in her argument, but so I think it's a cap rate argument basically here.
Basically, yes.
Because I think that the NOI that the city's using is lower than yours, so. Anyway, that's just a comment. I guess you'll agree with that.
That is what the numbers are saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I gave it pretty good. She
Yeah.
might have used, I'm not sure what kind of vacancy, she used 1%,
Yes.
Yeah.
and I used a 3%, so
Right,
she
that's-
was the actual.
That would be the difference, yeah.
That's
Okay, thank
basically
you.
it.
Okay, Richard, any questions?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Just trying to visualize which one on Adsum it is.
It's like Adsum and Jefferson.
Adsum
Jefferson?
Surface, oh.
The Schiller? Oh, it's not the Schiller.
No, it's not the Schiller, no.
She could probably answer that better. I just wrote two
Yeah,
nearby streets.
it's 3 buildings, they're all in a row, and they're right next to a, is it a grocery store, or is it a gas station? There's a,
Shell-
on
is
the
there a
corner,
Shell
Shell
there?
station, and
Yeah,
then the 3,
okay.
yeah,
There
the
we
3
go.
buildings.
Oh, those have an Adsum address?
Yes.
I thought they'd be Manuel, or Jefferson.
Yeah.
No, they're absent.
Okay.
All right. So I think I'm just gonna cut to the chase. This really is a bit of a cap rate choice that this comes down to. This building is very dated. I mean, it's full because the rents are reasonable. The unit sizes, despite being a dated property, are a nice size for the type of building that it is. But as a result, I think that an investor looking at this property would look at it and think that it's going to eventually need some updating, and the cap rate would probably reflect that. And so that is why I chose a 5.3 cap rate versus a 5% cap rate that is used by the assessor. And that basically accounts for the substantial portion of the difference in our opinions on the value.
Okay, any questions?
So we agree this property, you mentioned the vacancy is really low, so there's a good demand for this property currently as it is?
I think there's no one moving out of the property. So I don't, it's harder to display demand if it's, I mean, this property has very stable, long-term tenants. And I think it's in part result because it's got a probably a little below market, not hugely below market, where there's a huge potential for someone to come in and do a lot of work and go a lot more, but I think there's definitely, the vacancy is reflective of the fact that there's the rents are reasonable, I'll put it that way.
Okay. So you're saying that the rent's a little bit low and that kind of offsets the vacancy. I know a lot of the buildings, they're bought for the purpose of renovation. Do you think this building, given the solid base there, tenants, an investor would see this as an opportunity to go in there and renovate and make a bunch of money?
I don't, part of the problem with the rehabilitation with this particular building is that I don't think you need to do sort of major work to fall under the mandate of a rehabilitation scheme. So oftentimes it's like a major upgrade to electrical or plumbing or that. This building is sort of in that in between. It doesn't need the major upgrades, it needs cosmetic work, and I'm not sure it would qualify for a rehabilitation scheme that would take it out of rent control.
Have there been any renovations to the property?
Not to my knowledge.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, any questions, Harvey?
Yeah, I do. So, the Maples is a very good area to rent in. I think it's probably one of the lowest vacancy factors in the city of Winnipeg. Would you agree with that?
I haven't done the analysis, but
Yeah.
it is a good area.
As a matter of fact, I'm sure you're renting all kinds of buildings, and you find that suites in the Maples are very easy to rent out.
As I said,
Yes.
this one is probably our lowest vacancy
Yeah.
of any of our buildings.
And other property managers have also indicated to me that they wish they had more properties in the Maples because they basically have no difficulty renting them out.
This is the only building we have in the
Yeah.
Maples.
Do you have a waiting list to get in?
I don't know that I don't know.
Okay, so you might have.
We might have, yes.
Okay, those are my questions, thanks.
Richard?
No, I just wanted to confirm nothing.
Oh, not another error.
No, no,
Okay.
no, sorry.
No, I am sorry.
No, I'm okay, thank you. No questions.
Nothing hinges on this, but was this the building that had the parking lot frozen with the water main break a few years ago? Cars were frozen in for a period of time.
I recall something vaguely about that happening at one of our buildings, but I can't be sure it was this one.
Just out of curiosity. So nothing hinges from that. So if not, thank you for your presentation, and thank you. And that concludes today's hearing.